What up, what up, what up? Welcome to another episode of New Orleans Basketball, New Orleans Network podcast. As always, I am your host, Raphael Rattler, joined by my fellow middle brother, Garrick Raphael. Happy New Year, bro!
What up, bro? How's everything going, man? Happy New Year. It's a blessing to be here in 2025. Happy New Year to everybody listening, everybody out there. Happy New Year. Hopefully it's a prosperous, fantastic, wonderful, great New Year for everyone. I do obviously got to take a second to shout out the 14 victims of the tragic and senseless terrorist attack in the city that I love, in the community that I love. Just a gut-wrenching, awful story to wake up to on New Year's, man. With as all I don't really go down on bourbon, but all accounts it was a lot of love, a lot of everybody putting all the differences that God knows we have so many of, putting them to the side, man. What up, Michael? And just everybody just enjoying the revelry, and then obviously. Senseless, sick people doing senseless, sick things. So just want to give a shout out to all the first responders who worked so quickly to put their life on the line and protect the people who they could. And just love and condolences to the families and everyone involved, man. Just an awful time to wake up to see that. But outside of that, man, it has been a good start to the new year. For myself personally, and then also obviously, the Pels got to be able to stop the slide and start a streak. So, it's always partially good with the Pelicans. It's never always good because, of course, as one good thing happens, as one thing, as one thing comes together for the Pelicans, something goes apart and it goes away. So, outside of that, man, I'm blessed, man. Just once again, loving and admiration to my city and my community, man. Just another thing for us to come back over and another thing that we will. So how's everything on your side, bro?
Right. Everything is blessed, to your point. Absolutely. Prayers and condolences to everybody in the city of New Orleans and for the people who stepping up. Like, again, I've had so many people ask me, how's everything? How's your family? And, the answer I give them is all the same. It's another one of those things where New Orleans, if any city is going to respond and come back stronger, it'd be that one. So we'll be just all right. But on top of that, you're absolutely right. 2025 is off to a blessed start for the Pelicans and for myself as well. And before we get into that, make sure you guys are following us on X, on Twitter, on IG, on TikTok. That's NO_basketball, no E. And make sure if you're not already, subscribe to the channel and like the episode below. So, New Year's Day, just so happened it might be the last game you ever see Jimmy Butler play for the Miami Heat. Now, play is a very loose term, but the Pelicans start the new year with a loss. Now, naturally, they were in that one for quite some time, and we're not going to rehash all this game. But again, it was one of those stories where the Pelicans fight as hard as they can, and then the better players on the court and the more cohesive team takes over at the end, and the Heat kind of controlled that one afterwards. And then they get to play the Wizards twice, and the Wizards actually have a better record than the Pelicans. They happen to have less losses. They have the same amount of wins, but the less losses. But going into this one, the Pelicans had lost 10 games in a row. So it was one of those 11 games in a row. So it was one of those things where you can't necessarily guarantee that they were going to win in this scenario, but they come out in the first one, and it's the first win that the Pelicans have without BI this season. It's the first win that the Pelicans have without BI and Zion this season. They're 1-27, which is atrocious. And then they come back. They fly to Washington. They do it again. This time in Washington. Of course, you mentioned it earlier. With one good thing coming back in Jose Alvarado, you must lose another. And Trey Murphy, injuring his ankle in the third quarter. Apparently, he's day-to-day. He's already out versus the Wolves, but he walked off a little bit stronger than he did the last time he injured his ankle. So you hope that that's quickly turned around. DeJounte Murray gets his first triple-double as a Pelican. All is good again. But, again, the Pelicans are 2-8 in their last 10 games, and those 2 wins happen to be versus the lowest team in the NBA outside of themselves. But it comes to question, like, they've been playing better. The wins haven't been there, but they've been playing better over the last week or so ago. So is this just a function of the Pelicans figuring some things out, or is this more so, play them?
Once again, I think that 2 things can be true at the same time. Only a Sith deals in absolutes. I think it's a little bit of both. I think the Pelicans, if you watch the Pelicans, right, and again, if you've adjusted, like I've been trying to kind of suggest people been doing, adjust the way you kind of look at watch the Pelicans this season, then you can see some things starting to take place, right? Obviously, the Trey Murphy ascension has been the driving force of the competitiveness, right? When you start to see Trey Murphy assert himself more as the number one option, and the team kind of pivots to him as the number one option and treats him like the number one option, you get to see, you see what happens, right? This Trey Murphy ascension has been, like I tweeted yesterday, something to behold. I mean, this guy is showing you every single thing in the book offensively, hitting the boards on the defensive side of the ball. He's gotten to a point where he's just as lethal after 2 dribbles as he is at catch and shoot. And if you would have told me that before the season started, I would have been like, no way, there's no way possible, right? But here he is, 2 dribbles, and if you're not paying attention, he will put you on a poster, which we saw, and it might be 1 or 2 guys. So that driving force is real, right? Like him turning and taking that leap is real. That is part of why these games are more competitive. You have a wing that can go out and you feel as though you're not, obviously you don't have 50 points or whatever the case is with Brandon Ingram and Zion on the side, but you don't feel immediately outgunned as soon as you step on the floor. Like you at least can play the game, and then if the full quarter comes, you get outgunned. So that's a starting driving point, right? Some of the guys who have come back are starting to play better. Herb is starting to play better. DeJounte is starting to play better. These guys are starting to play better. And so you're starting to see, some of these lapses where the Pelicans don't have any offense or anything. They're getting fewer and far further between. Obviously, CJ, his 50-point eruption, he's starting to get those, his legs underneath him. And he's a little bit motivated, right, for things that we'll talk about. But you have all of that down to the, all of those reasons why the Pelicans are now competing well and now are in more games, seem like. On the other hand, the Washington Wizards are not a good team. They are not a good team. They have some serious issues, and this goes back to kind of a point. They have some, if you want to look at the Washington Wizards, and makes you appreciate the Pelicans front office even more, because again, the Wizards have had time after time after time after time, again, bites at the apples to get, these blue chip guys, right? Like you got the Bilal Koulibaly, you have Alex Sarr, but like there's Johnny Davis up there, like he's not a great pick. Like there's a lot of guys that they've missed on up there, and it goes to show you, when the Pelicans are churning out and you get comfortable seeing Trey Murphy and Herb Jones and Najee Marshall and Jose Alvarado, like that's finding guys, right? The same way that you blame them for Kyra and Jackson and Nickel to a certain extent. You see what happens relying on that draft. And so the Wizards are in a really, really tough spot. So I do want to take these wins with not even a grain of salt, like a whole Morton's thing of salt. But I do think there are things that the Pelicans are showing, with this kind of new offense that they've kind of just turned to Trey Murphy, which again, they're going to have to redo again, which we'll get into. But I think it's a little bit of both. It's the Wizards are not great, but the Pelicans I think they are coming together and finding a little bit of rhythm with the guys that they do have available.
Right. So The thing that I point to right away is that like it's very obvious that even though like guys have been struggling, to your point, like it's hard for Willie to first off play without your two best players, but then also play with everybody else coming back from injury with no rhythm and nobody's really on except for Trey Murphy. So like you're asking him to play an uphill battle before the ball is tipped off. And now that those guys are starting to play better, your margin for error, even though it's already small, gets a little bit bigger because CJ's capable of a 50-point night and Trey's capable of 35 points and DeJounte's capable of a triple-double, and now Herb Jones is capable of hitting a three-pointer once again. Like, now players are starting to do what they already do, and so now you're able to do more. And again, to your point, like, when you're playing two spots up, DeJounte Murray's turnovers all of a sudden are more impactful. When CJ doesn't hit a three, all of a sudden you're down 10 again. And so for guys that you're asking to play out of their role, like you can hear after their interviews, they're like, we're trying. Like it's like we're trying to step in those shoes, but it hurts without Zion and BI because no one has that staying power. And so like them playing a kind of elevate, to your point, that helps Trey Murphy and that probably helps his development long term. But at the same time, that's just not conducive to winning. But the other thing that's kind of been plaguing them is that they haven't had an identity. So not only have you been injured, like every night, you're not really sure what you're going to get. Like, are there going to be a lot of threes taken? Are people going to attack the rim? Are people going to play like scrappy defense? Like, you didn't really know what you were getting from not even night to night, quarter to quarter at times. And so, what I've seen, not just over the Wizards game, but like over the last 10 games, the scrappiness is picked up. They're fifth in steals, they're sixth in blocks. They're passing the ball more. They're 10th in assists. You can visually see the ball moving around quicker and the ball moving from hand to hand a little bit better than when they're all trying to catch a rhythm. They're all trying to figure out, okay, well, DeJounte wasn't around before, so like, does he get his first and then try to feed off someone else? Or CJ, you're the scorer. We need you to score because and so like you could see them thinking on the court, and now it just feels like they're hooping again. And like the last thing that we've been talking about, like, to your point about Trey Murphy, I don't think it's that big of a surprise that the predatory wing offense that you were running, that was set up and you built throughout the offseason for Zion and Brandon Ingram, happened to look a whole lot better when you put a predatory wing in Trey Murphy in its place and you run the offense through him, right? And so now you're putting him in those positions. The Pelicans over the last 10 games are 10th in free throw attempts after being the first part of the season last in rim rate. And a lot of that is Trey Murphy going to the rim. And so you see DeJounte making a more consistent effort to get down in and get to the rim. You see CJ, you see all these players saying, hey, Zion and Brandon are not here. We've got to still be a paint a great team no matter what. And so the identity is starting to build. And so you talk about the players getting injured. You talk about the identity kind of coming together. And again, it's the Wizards, but now you get a test right away tomorrow night with Anthony Edwards and seeing what it looks like versus that. But a lot of it has to do with, and I think, again, the jolt in energy from the team with the return of Jose Alvarado. So you're in the building. It was a game where if they didn't win, like, I think a lot of questions are being talked about afterwards. Very similar to like what happened with the Saints early in the season when they lost to the Panthers, right? Like, I think some questions are talked about. I'm not saying anyone gets fired and things like that, but all of a sudden, like, you're at an all-time low. You are the last place team, and you lost to the second to last place team. You're in a different spot. But when Jose comes back, from the moment he comes back, it felt like the team got its ass back. So tell me what it was like in that game. Tell me what you've seen from what Jose has been able to bring to the team and what his return can bring to this roster.
Yeah, the Wizards game, the home Wizards game was quite the environment, because I think if you ask 10 Pelicans fans, right, and you stretch it from, you know, casual, just coming to the game every whatever, versus like diehard NOB listeners, if you ask those 10 people, like, what would you have liked to see in that game? I think they all would have said, like, you can be sad through the season and try to go for a draft pick, but like, don't lose to like the Wizards, like with everybody watching, like, oh, this is the two worst teams in the league. Let's see what happens. You don't want to lose that game while everybody's watching, especially the away game, because it came on right after, everybody was waiting for the Pelicans Wizards game. Nobody cared about that the OKC game. That was unethical hoops. We were ready for the ethical hoops later on. They did, but so you go to the Smoothie King Center and like. I go back and I listen to the home game. I go back and watch the home games after I get back from the arena, and you can hear AD talk about like CJ had a different little bounce to him and everything. And so you saw that, right? Like you saw him kind of moving differently in the Smoothie King. And listen, it was a giveaway night, so like they had a lot of families and stuff there. They were giving away the keychains, and like it was a pretty live environment. And then obviously, CJ started rolling, and everybody picked up, and everybody started counting like, hey man, CJ is in fuego. But to your point, you kind of saw the Pelicans hit a different gear, and it was palpable in the Smoothie King Center when Jose got in the game. And so he brings a level of frenetic energy that the Pelicans know they play well with, but they don't know how to get there without him. And I think DeJounte is going to help that out as he gets more acclimated to the team as Zion comes back. And, I think they'll get into that more up and down pace, but he is the battery pack. When they put him in the game, they immediately take off running. They start playing faster, because even after made baskets, Jose is like, give me the ball. Like he's throwing the ball to the ref and like, give me the ball. And he's out even on made baskets. And the Pelicans play well in that, especially when you don't have a lot of your half-court killers, such like Brandon Ingram and Zion. Like you want to get – that's what makes OKC so great, is that, yeah, they might not hit the threes that Boston hits, like in the game that they played, but they outscored Boston like 21-3 and points off turnovers and getting up in fast break points. So you overcome that math deficit in the three-point game by getting more opportunities in transition, getting more opportunities in steals. And that's what Jose brings, right? That's just those little things. And you look up at the scoreboard, and again, he has 4 points, three assists, whatever the case is. And I think, we saw him get hot and do the scoring thing. But what he does is putting that battery into the team and making them play faster, making them play off the rim. And I think you pair him up with a guy like Eves, who just loves to run up and down like that, then that's a formidable kind of transition, fast-paced offense that can last you for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and buy CJ Trey those minutes. And so Jose's coming back. Obviously, again, it's weird to say, Raph. Just like 2 months ago, we were like, can anybody come back? Like a couple of weeks ago, we were like, can anybody come back? And now you're saying, well, Jose's back, and now you're seeing less Brandon Boston. Javonte Green's not playing. He's out of the rotation right now. And so, like, these are the decisions that Willie has to make. But obviously, Jose comes in and he does exactly what he's been doing, picking up the defense, picking up the energy, picking up the speed of the team. And I think it has paid dividends off. And again, you saw it in both of those Wizards games.
Right. I think outside of Zion, I'm not sure anybody else has like the instant impact capability of Jose on the team, at least. Like, to your point, it's not just the stats. It's not just the speed and the pace he brings to the game. It's almost like, well, if Jose is throwing his little bitty body all around the court, what's my excuse? Like, all of a sudden you see bodies hit the floor more. You see people willing to do more just to win. And again, like, that's something that's almost irreplaceable, right? Like one of those things where you look and say every team needs that jolt somewhere on their team. And so it's good to have him back, because the times where you were close or the third quarter is about to hit and you had no energy, not only did you not have your two best players, you didn't have the spark plug to get you back and to get you going. So you're absolutely right. His return was felt so much. And now with Trey's injury and seeing what that means and what that leads to, you again, to your point, you will see what decision will be made as far as this roster goes. So talk about roster decisions. And I think some interesting things have been said the last week In regards to CJ McCollum, right? CJ is the most veteran player. Him and Daniel Tice have been around. Javonte Green have been around, but he's the reason why he's the vice president of the NBA PA and things like that is because he knows the game well and he's always carried himself well. And so, like we've talked about, a lot of CJ's value on the court was obvious because what he was intended to be. Like, he was supposed to be the third option next to Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, and that almost never happened in his entire tenure up until this point consistently. And so he gets a bad rap because he's always been put in bad positions where he's asked to do more than what he was brought here to do. But I think so much more of his value is more what he's done off the court and how he's been able to be a pro for a relatively young locker room. And so in a situation where, he talks about, hey, I know it's January. I know what's coming up in February. I know the deadline's out. And he's asked straight up, hey, and multiple times he's like, yeah, whose name's in the rumors? Like, he's aware of the moment and he's acknowledging it without acknowledging it. But he talks about, like, hey, I haven't been playing well so far this season. I came off the injury too, and I got to get my value but back where it needs to be. Then he comes out with a 50-point game. Then he's like, yo, in 6 days, I'm going to be shooting 40%. And then he comes out with another 25-point game and leads the team again. And you and I have been texting off the pod. CJ's playing like a guy who's like, if I'm going to be the odd man out, you're going to show what I'm going to go get. Come get me. Like, I'm a player that can help you win now. I don't know if that's capable of happening or not on the trade market or not, but that's how he's playing right now. So my question to you is, like, do you see CJ possibly being the odd man out? We've talked about Jordan Hawkins' ascension and what he was drafted to be, and now Brandon Boston, another microwave scorer that's capable of playing and defending on the other end as well. Could this be one of those things where CJ's reading the room and saying, it could be me?
I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, CJ has value in a multitude of ways, right? Two of which you just said. But for a team who, is on the cusp of contending, right? Maybe not contending this year, but on the cusp of doing something. His contract this year, going into this year, was like, it's a $30 million, 33 next year. And it's like, that's a lot of money, right? Especially for the Pelicans. And if they're completely built out, he's a pseudo starter. Is he starting? Is he not? Right. But wherever the case you fall on that, the fact that you have to question that for a $33 million player is something that just had to, it's something that had to be talked about. And so, when you talk about that contract going into the season and then you watch how he's played, what he's shown, lately, what he's shown you, the value that he has from the 3-point line. And then knowing that next season, his contract and him will be an asset, right? Between the guy who can shoot 40% for the 3-point line next to your young star or your older star or your third player, whatever the case is. And then also have $33 million coming off your book as an expiring contract. So he has a lot of value, around the league. And so, again, we talked about, I tweeted earlier today about a trade. Like, the Detroit Pistons are a team that you should be looking at, by all accounts, obviously they lose Jaden Ivey, possibly for the season, but like, they aren't terrible. And like, they have so much salary cap space where they could make a trade, taking a guy like CJ. He comes in, is the professional, the same way he was for the young Pelicans roster. He could go there and also fit next to Cade, kicking out for those 3-pointers. And Asura Thompson could fit around those guys and shoot around those guys. And then he's not an expensive $40, $50, $60 million player like you talk about with Zach LaVine and Bradley Beal, like all of those other guys who talk about are available, Jimmy Butler. And then also, again, he's an expiring. So like, next season, if the Pistons don't want him, they could say, hey, veteran team, come get CJ McCollum or whatever the case is. And so he does have a lot of value to a team like that. And so when you watch what CJ has done, again, he is the professional's professional. He is the player's player, right? He is a guy that's going to come out and be as professional as possible and say all of the right things. And so, again, if you watch his actions and you listen to him, him talk, he knows what this year is about. He understands where the Pelicans are as far as the record this season, the books for next season. Like either, I think he knows. And again, this is a guy who hasn't gotten traded a lot, right? He's only been traded once from Portland to New Orleans, but he knows what happens with trades. And this is somebody who sat and constructed the CBA. So he understands the books and things like that. And so I think, he's a player that understands that he has to get, his value up to a level that is, something that he is used to. I think the Pelicans are happy that he's getting his value up as well. I do think that he is on the trading block, and I think that he is a guy that they will be really listening to offers for. And again, it's something that whether it's to save money, for something with Brandon Ingram or just moving further, you have Jordan Hawkins, you have Trey Murphy, you just have a lot of guys who can give you a lot of what maybe not as all right. CJ McCollum obviously is one of the better shooters of the NBA has seen. You've seen his 3-point percentage, and you've seen the effectiveness that he still has at this point of his career. But you just have a lot of guys that can give you 60%, 70% of that for a way cheaper thing. And again, it's not CJ the person, it's not CJ the player, it's the business side of it. And I think he understands that.
Right. He talks about his window is now. He talks about his family loving the city and what he's brought here. But he also recognizes the business aspect of it. And so
and listen, he's put his money where his mouth is. He has done so much for this community, in a lot of different ways. And so it's really not the person, it's not the player, it's just the business. And I think honestly, if you give CJ McCollum like some true serum, and you gave the Pelicans some true serum, I think they both would agree that what his job was to come here and do, he's done it well. And I think that even CJ would love to go somewhere where he could contribute and also be in a situation as he turns into the twilight of his career, compete and be somewhere where he can, try to win a championship. And that's one of the last things that he hasn't had on his resume as a player. And I'm sure it's something that he would like to at least chase.
Absolutely. So you talk about the bill coming due. Trey Murphy, again, is out day to day. Hopefully that he's not out too long because the Pelicans just need some glimmer of hope when it comes to the injury bug. But then later on today, you get an announcement you were not expecting. Zion Williamson is questionable, not doubtful, questionable for tomorrow night's game versus the Timberwolves. First off, you and I talked about this off the pod. I think in some ways, the Pelicans were like, listen, when we say Zion's going to be out this amount of time and then he comes back later than that, you yell at us. When we come back and we say Zion's going to be out longer amount of time and then we don't know the answer, you yell at us. So we might as well just not tell you anything and say indefinitely and say he'll be back when he's back, because that's essentially what happened. He was practicing. He was gearing up all the letters and phrases you want to use to say he's getting back into basketball shape, things like that. And all of a sudden, he's questionable for a whole upcoming home game versus Anthony Edwards, where Trey Murphy might be hurt. So my first question to you is, if he plays in this one or he plays in the back-to-back game versus the Blazers the next day, what are you looking for from Zion? I feel like it's been seasons since you've seen Zion Williamson play, especially with this iteration of the team. So, what are your first couple things that you're looking for, especially if Trey Murphy's not on the court?
First things first is I'm going to be looking at his conditioning. I'm going to look, by all accounts, everyone's tweeted Willie, not Willie, friend of the pod, Will Guillory. Everyone is tweeted how well he's looked, how he's attacked. Ramona Shelburne was on NBA Today talking about how he's attacking this rehab and how he's the leanest he's looked. We've heard it, you've heard it so many times. And, Will even alluded to it. It doesn't matter what anybody says. It's about what he's going to show on the court when he is there. So I want to see his conditioning, because before he got injured, he was still trying to get to his, peak Zion. He talked about it in the offseason. It was going to take him to game 20 before you really saw that he was in it. And he never even got to game 10, let alone game 20. So I want to see where his conditioning is. Has he been attacking that part of it? Because again, the skill set is there. Obviously, you want to see, him kind of increase the offensive bag. But like, if he wants to, Zion can score 25 points if he really puts his mind to it. It's just about, is he going to have the win to do it? And obviously, they're going to probably put him on minutes restrictions, things, Lord forgive
yes.
the bursts. Just don't do the bursts. But I want to see if what his condition look like, if he's coming out and he's huffing and puffing. Obviously, he's going to take time to get into real basketball shape. But you wanted to see him kind of work on that conditioning as the season was going. He hit a pause to do it, but by all accounts, he's been attacking it. He's been attacking the rehab. So let us see the fruits of that labor. And then what's his explosion looking like, right? Like, because again, he has some like really weird field goal percentage games, especially against like the Portland Trailblazers, where he was like 5 for like 15 or whatever it was. And people will start to question, like, is that first step going away? Is that whatever? And then you saw him have games where he didn't win 14 for 15 or 14 for 16. It's going 40 points, 35 points, whatever the case is. And so where's that explosion now, right? Are you trusting that hamstring? Are you trusting that leg? Because Zion is not a person where like, okay, the hamstring is a little injured, is a little wonky, so he could go into something else, right? He could go into a veteran crafty game where he's not using the explosion. Like Zion knows how to play one way, right? Even in the clip that the Pelicans social media team put on their Twitter, it was him dunking. It was not him was not him shooting, was not him laying the ball up. It was him two hands dunking. And so, are you trusting that hamstring? Are you thinking about it? Does it affect your explosiveness? And what does that conditioning look like? Those are going to be the two things that I'm going to be looking for off the dump. Because again, I do think you want to see some other things with his offense and stuff, but I think you need to wait for that down the line. Get him on the court and see what can he stay on the court for these bursts without getting tired, without having lapses on defense. If it's because of the rust, that's one thing. But if he's like mentally tired, or if you start seeing him huffing and puffing 2 minutes in, then that's something that I think you'll be like, oh, can we not do that? Can we have something else? So those are the two things I'm going to be looking at. What about you?
I'm going to disagree with you just a little bit. So going into this season, we talked about like this was the first season. He had the hamstring at the end of last season that cost him the playoffs. But like going in this was like the first year where Zion got to like train and not just get healthy, but actually train and add things to his game. And early in this game, I've seen podcasts and I've watched videos and people say, "Oh, Zion's not doing this, Zion's not doing that." But like when he first started the season, yes, he was sick game one. That's why he missed it. And then he was trying to get his legs underneath him, so he wasn't in rhythm until right before he got hurt. Versus the Cavs, we had like 30 and 10. But like all throughout that, you saw him playing defense. And you saw him giving effort on that end. And he talks about that being kind of the next step for him, that he can be an impactful defender. And you saw the fruits of that labor. You also saw him shooting jumpers more. Now, no heat to your point. He's not shooting mid-range, three-pointers like that. But he was willing to shoot the open ones and willing to shoot the ones that he can walk into where he's practiced certain shots in the paint or certain sky hooks or things like that in the paint. And so, yes, I want to see his conditioning. Because to your point, I think that's been the biggest knock on him. Not just, hey, you get injured, but how you look when you come back from injury. So, yeah, I want to see, like, are you ready to play basketball? Like, you've been out for 2 months for a hamstring. Are you ready to play basketball? But I want to see, like, did you add that other stuff to your game, or were you just trying that out because it was the first 10 games of the season? Like, I want to know, like, is defense now something you're bringing to the game, one steal, one block every single night? Are you pushing the pace offensively and running from floor to floor and hounding the offensive rebounds like this team needs to do from all their wings because they only have 1 7-footer like that? And so, like, are you coming back with everything that you started the season with, or are you just relying upon your athletic ability again, to everyone's credit? And so, like, that's what I'm interested to see from Zion. Like, that's what I'm looking for in terms of, like, he wanted, what did he say? He wanted to come in and wreck this season, and this is, he wanted to show an example. Well, coming off an injury and people talking bad you about it again, how do you come out and show it? And again, it's not game 1, game 2 back. It's like once you get the rhythm, what all have you added, right? And so that's what I'm looking for. And then the other part of that is we just talk about this team getting a little bit of a rhythm, this team building a little bit of a chemistry. Well, now you're throwing a one option back in. And so now Trey's gotten a little bit confident off the dribble. DeJounte's starting to catch a little rhythm with Eves and everyone like that. Hawk is starting to show.
Not only are you adding a one, but you're taking Trey out.
Exactly, right? And so now can people readjust? And Zion's a really easy player to play off of because of the gravity it gives everyone else. But are people still as confident and are as dominant, taking their chances and taking their mismatch when the opportunities present itself? And so those are some of the things I'm looking from Zion and also from the roster and also from Willie Green, how he incorporates it all together. So that's all we got for you for this pod. Again, knock on wood, hopefully you see Zion Williamson the next time the Pelicans take the court. But as we wrap up, Garrick, what you got left for the people?
As always, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile a day. Yeah, tomorrow should be a good one versus Minnesota. I want to see if with Trey out and Zion possibly coming back, can DeJounte get some of that second option, first option juice that we saw him having in some of his other spots? Like I'd like to see a 25, 30 point game from him. If they're not going to be able to go to Trey and Zion going to be on minutes restriction, CJ can't be the only one scoring, right?
Well, Garrett, let me stop you there. The Pelicans, even without Trey Murphy, if Zion's in the lineup, they would total lineup of DeJounte Murray, all-star, CJ McCollum, 20-point career scorer, Zion Williamson, Herb Jones, first-team all-defense, and Ease Measy and the – so, yeah, that's still a good team. That's still a good team. So, go ahead.
Yeah. Nah, you're right. I mean, it again speaks to the depth of the Pelicans that should have been, but it is what it is. So yeah, I'll be in the building. I'm really looking forward to the game tomorrow, and obviously the Blazers afterward, and then Friday they in Philly for against the 76ers. So with that being said, once again, you never know what people are going through, so give someone a smile a day. New Orleans, we love you. We grieve with you. Love this city, love this community, love to see everybody coming together and support each other because we surely do need it. So as always, you can find myself at Garrick_Rattler on Twitter. Follow my brother at Raphael_Rattler. Follow the page at NO_basketball no E. That's on Twitter, Instagram, wherever you get your social medias. Most importantly, subscribe to New Orleans.basketball, and we'll see you guys on the next one.